Welcome to the conversation. I'm Chris.
And I'm Shane.
And tonight, we're here to discuss the news of the day. The most pressing news of the day, of course, being Barack Obama's recent speech concerning his decision to add 30,000 more troops to the ongoing efforts in Afghanistan. The premise of the show, in case this is your first time listening, is that it's kind of a debate style format. I am a conservative, and Shane is a liberal. And we're both pretty reasonable guys, so occasionally we agree on things, and neither one of us toes the party line 100% all the time, so occasionally we agree, but most of the time it gets pretty heated. If you listen to our last conversation, I think you would know that we do get heated at some times. But anyways, on to tonight's topic. The president addressed troops at the West Point, described by Chris Matthews as the enemy camp, which I thought was true.
That's not true at all. But I think what's interesting is the decision that he made. This was a long process, 80 days or something like that. A lot of deliberation with his cabinet members, and he came to the decision of what he's going to do with Afghanistan during his presidency. And basically, the decision he made was to say, "All right, I'm going to escalate for like 18 months, and then hopefully that gives us time to train up a bunch of Afghan security forces and increase their pay and do a lot of things in the civilian government and try to work more with Pakistan and whatever else they have planned for that." And then around July 2011, then they begin to draw down. They begin to pull people out, and they basically gave this timeline. And I think the real story is the timeline, because this is the first time that I think a president in the war on terror has done something like that.
Well, I think it's odd that you would say that this is the first time a president's done something like that. The thing that struck me is I felt like I had deja vu listening to the speech. Basically, everything he said was the same things that George Bush said before he announced his surge strategy. And basically, the only striking difference is, instead of saying, we're going to withdraw depending on the conditions on the ground and the advice of my commanders, Barack Obama made what I think is the biggest mistake in this policy, is setting a semi-firm date of July 2011, because all that does is set people up in Afghanistan to know when we're going to leave. And one of our biggest problems in convincing tribal elders and community leaders to work with us and forego working with the Taliban is this attitude amongst the Afghani people that the Americans are just here for a little while, but the Taliban will be with us here forever.
Well, the problem is I don't think those guys like the Taliban very much. The Taliban, they have a lot of money from the drug trade, from the opium trade over there, and they have a lot of people with guns on their side. But really, there's tens of thousands of them, and not much more than that. And then you've got a couple hundred Al Qaeda, and we're going to have 30,000 more troops over there. These people are not all going to leave, I don't think, in July. I think Gates and Clinton kind of said that today. It's going to be kind of the beginning of the drawdown. And it is going to be based on conditions on the ground, something that Bush said. But the great thing about the timeline and the deadline for withdrawal is it puts the pressure on the Karzai government, it puts the pressure on the Afghan security forces and the people who want stability in their country, who don't want the Taliban to come back. Vast majorities of the Afghan people do not want the Taliban controlling their lives again, and the violence and the horrible conditions that existed there. And they're going to try to do what they can to make sure that they're ready for that.
I agree with most of what you said there, actually. The one thing I would point to, though, is that it's not. I don't think that 100% of American troops are going to be withdrawn in July 2011. I don't think the president meant that either. But I think that's what a lot of the Afghani people are going to hear, and that's the way it's going to be interpreted. This war is any counterinsurgency, especially, is all based on perceptions of the local populace. And one of the things you have to do in a counterinsurgency, one of the reasons for the surge in the first place, is you want to give them the feeling of security, the feeling that the government forces, the United States forces, the NATO forces are the overwhelming military superior force that can provide security, and they're in there for the long haul and make people feel comfortable working with those people. And by announcing that deadline, I think he weakened his policy from a public perception point of view.
Well, yeah, I think one of the things that Gates said today is the withdrawal is going to be gradual and based on conditions, based specifically on security in the local areas. I think one of the things that Obama's going to focus on, like you mentioned, is the importance of the tribal areas and not this centralized Karzai government. One thing I would say about the purpose of this surge, and I don't mind calling it that because I actually liked the Iraqi surge too, I think you have to train up the Afghan security forces, and they've been losing a lot of people to the Taliban because the Taliban actually have more money because of their connections to the opium trade. And one thing that McChrystal said that they're going to start doing actively is dramatically increasing the pay of the security forces over there to compete. Similar to what they did in the Sunni awakening in Iraq with actually specifically paying Taliban, only this time we're paying people who are supposedly the good guys who are going to end up fighting for the causes that we want over there for the stability of the Afghanistan people. And I think that's a good thing too.
Yeah, I think there's some good tactics involved in this. It's ironic here, we're kind of switching roles here. Shane being the Democrat liberal who supported the surge in Iraq, and me being the conservative Republican who did not support the surge in Iraq and still thinks the long-term results will not be effective. And also, I don't support this surge in Afghanistan. And the reasons why is that these problems that we see are societal and cultural problems that exist in Afghanistan that another 18 months are not going to solve. These are problems that go back for decades, if not even longer than that. These people are literally living in the Stone Age. Most of the women have never been more than 1 day's walking distance away from the point in which they were born. The society is so alien to the United States to think that we can add 30,000 troops for 18 more months after we've been there for 8 years, and suddenly we're going to have some sort of a manageable, respectable country there is frankly quite arrogant.
I don't know that anyone's ever actually said that. I don't think that that's the stated purpose. The purpose is to make sure that we can get out of there. And I think that our security and our interests are served if the Afghanistan security forces are up to snuff. Now, we've made vast improvements in Iraq, and I think a lot of that is due to the surge and the security that the surge provided. Security has not even really been the issue in Afghanistan. Yes, there's been an upsurge in violence because the Taliban have learned how to do that stuff. But really, violence in the country hasn't been the problem. The problem has been the fact that it's been sort of meandering. It's just no real progress, and there's a lot of corruption in the civilian government. So now I think this is going to set the conditions necessary for civilian improvement in the Karzai government. And at this point, Iraq is not really falling apart. I haven't seen any signs that as we pull out that there's problems there. I know you think there will be. I really don't think so. I think a larger problem for us at this point is just the American public's approval of this.
Well, there's definitely going to be problems with Iraq as we pull out. One thing I'll point out is we haven't really significantly begun our pullout of Iraq yet. We still have about 100,000 troops there. Wait till that number gets down to about 25,000. Let's see what happens in northern Iraq, specifically in the Kurdistan region. And we can't really pass judge, I don't think, on the surge or the Iraq war in general for at least another couple of years. But moving back to Afghanistan, I think the situation in Afghanistan is vastly worse from where we are. The distance between where we are and where we want to be in Afghanistan is a lot farther away than it was even in Iraq. Specifically looking not at the security issues like you said, but looking at just the formation of their government, formation of a society, putting together an infrastructure that would make that country work. We're so far away from that, and 18 months or even another 5 years just isn't going to get us there.
I don't know that we need this utopia, this excellent functioning Western democratic country. All we really need is bare bones infrastructure. That's a dramatic improvement over what was there 10 years ago. And I think what you have now is a dramatic improvement to begin with. And I think if we make any kind of progress along the lines of what the administration is trying to do, then I think it'll have been worth it. All we really need is a functioning security force that we can support logistically. So I think, one thing that we really need to look at here is, are the American people going to support this? 18 months is a short amount of time, I think, and they will, I think, stick with Obama during that time if they stick with him overall. So I think, at some point in the future, we're going to have to talk about the fact that I think the American people are becoming a little bit more isolationist in general. So a lot of these things may be swept away, and our foreign policy may change dramatically as a result of that. But that's it for us on this topic, and I guess we'll talk to you guys next time.